Don't make a sound.
The warning didn't come over the police radio. It came at 3:33 a.m. as a rough whisper from a dark doorway. It was the only thing that would save Officer Maya Singh's life. A light rain was falling. Officer Maya Singh drove her patrol car through the shiny, empty streets of the industrial area. The dashboard lights glowed in the dark car. For the last 6 hours, her shift had been boring, just streets, dark warehouses, and chatter on the radio. Her partner, Dave Miller, had called in sick, so she was alone. She was tired, but it wasn't just from lack of sleep, it was the stress of the job. She pulled over and turned off the engine to write a report about some minor vandalism. It was completely silent except for the sound of water dripping from an old fire escape. The city felt different at night, full of secrets. She had learned to trust her feelings when the air shifted, signaling that trouble was near. Tonight, the air felt heavy and still. As she reached for the door handle, a voice cut through the quiet. "Don't talk." It wasn't a shout, but a rough, harsh whisper. Maya's hand froze. She looked around and saw a figure in the shadows of a doorway. He looked like many homeless men in the city, dirty clothes, a messy beard, and wet hair. A scruffy dog with matted fur sat at his feet as still as its owner. Her police training made her think of what to do. The man was an unknown threat. He could be drunk or unwell. She knew she should keep her distance and have her hand on her weapon. But this felt different. The man wasn't moving strangely or talking to himself. He was completely still. When the streetlight hit his eyes, they were very bright. He didn't look crazy. He looked intelligent and desperate. The dog growled, but it wasn't looking at her. It was staring at the dark alley behind her car. "Stay where you are," Maya ordered in a firm, professional voice. She decided not to reach for her gun. This didn't feel like a threat, it felt like a warning. The man didn't move. He kept looking at her with an urgent expression. "Behind you," he whispered again. The sound was so quiet she could barely hear it. He's been waiting. A chill went down her spine. Her instincts told her that the man was telling the truth. She slowly looked over her shoulder. The alley was dark and full of overflowing bins and steam coming from sewer grates. It looked empty, just as it should, but the air felt tense as if something was about to happen. The dog's growl got deeper, and the fur on its back stood up. The man slowly lifted a shaky hand and pointed into the shadows. "I saw him follow your car about 10 minutes ago. He hid in there when you parked. He's being patient." The detail, 10 minutes, convinced her. It sounded specific and real. Adrenaline rushed through her, and she could taste metal. She pressed her back against the cold car for cover. Her hand was now firmly on her gun, and her eyes were fixed on the alley. The rain started to fall harder, drumming on the car roof and making the air feel thick with tension. In that moment, her world shrank to that one wet street. She was a police officer, and he was a man society saw as worthless. But a strange trust formed between them in that second, and it felt as real as the gun in her hand. "Who's there?" she whispered sharply, but the rain seemed to swallow the sound. There was no answer, only the sound of water in a nearby drain and a distant siren. She tried to calm her breathing to listen for any sound over her own fast-beating heart. Then she heard it. A soft, wet scuffle. It was the sound of a shoe on the wet ground. It was quick and nervous. Her body tensed up. The man's dog barked once, a sharp, loud sound that echoed off the walls. Without thinking, Maya aimed her flashlight into the alley. The bright light cut through the darkness and a shape moved out quickly, staying low to the ground. Her hand was already reaching for her gun. It was a move she had practiced thousands of times. But the man's rough voice shouted with sudden clarity, "Knife, don't shoot!" As he yelled, the attacker jumped at her. In the beam of her flashlight, she saw a long, sharp blade. Her heart pounded as she quickly twisted to the side, pulling her gun out of its holster. The dog snarled loudly and leaped forward, showing its teeth. Time seemed to slow down. She had a clear shot, and police rules said she should take it. An attacker with a knife was a deadly threat. But the man's warning had just saved her from a surprise attack. It had been real. She hesitated for a split second, choosing to trust the homeless man over her training. That was all it took for the situation to get worse. The attacker was thrown off balance by the dog but didn't fall. He turned and came at her with the knife raised high. His eyes showed a personal and chilling hatred. Maya jumped back and her foot slipped on the wet ground. For a terrifying moment, she felt like she was going to fall. In that moment, the homeless man moved. He jumped from the doorway and crashed into the attacker with great force. They both fell into a puddle with a loud splash. Maya froze, her gun raised, her mind racing. A civilian was now in the fight, which made the rules unclear. The dog barked and snapped at the attacker, which gave her a few precious seconds. The rain was now pouring down, soaking them all and making the fight a confusing blur of shadows and movement. "Get off him!" she screamed, her voice sounding raw. The man, Leo, though she didn't know his name yet, grunted. He held the attacker's wrist, keeping the knife away. The blade flashed just inches from his face. But he didn't let go. His strength was amazing. Maya moved around them, trying to find a clear shot without hitting the man who was saving her life. She was breathing in short, quick bursts full of adrenaline and fear. Finally, with no other choice, she fired a warning shot into the air. The loud crack broke the quiet of the night. The attacker flinched, and his grip loosened for a moment. That was the chance Leo needed. He twisted the knife out of the attacker's hand and threw it away. It spun through the air and landed near Maya's boots. She kicked it into the gutter without a second thought. It was a small victory. The attacker struggled but was losing his strength. Maya put her gun away and took out her handcuffs. With a quick, practiced move, she pinned the man's arm behind his back and locked the cuffs on him. The sharp click of the cuffs was a satisfying sound. The fight was over. The attacker went limp, mumbling curse words. Maya let out a long, shaky breath. Her whole body was trembling as the adrenaline started to fade. The seriousness of what had just happened settled on her, feeling heavy and cold. After the attacker was handcuffed and sitting against the patrol car, Maya turned to the man who had saved her. He was on his knees, breathing heavily with his wet hair stuck to his face. His dog was beside him, whining softly and licking his hand, its tail wagging a little. Maya just stared at him, unable to find the words. She had been trained for ambushes and knife fights, but nothing had prepared her for this. "You," she started, her voice cracking. "You could have been killed." For the first time in her career, Officer Maya Singh realized her life hadn't been saved by her training, her badge, or her gun. It had been saved by a man that society had forgotten, a man most people would avoid. He had nothing, but he had risked it all for a stranger. The thought felt heavy on her heart. The man just shrugged. It was a simple, tired gesture from someone who had faced death too many times to be scared of it. He wiped rain and dirt from his forehead with the back of his hand. "So could you," he said in a raw voice. He wasn't being proud or boastful, it was just a simple fact. Backup arrived with sirens and flashing lights that lit up the wet brick walls. Dave Miller was in the first car, looking more annoyed than sick. He looked at the scene, Maya soaked and shaking, a handcuffed suspect, and a homeless man with a dog, and he frowned. "What the hell happened here, Singh?" he asked, looking at the homeless man with obvious disgust. "This man just saved my life," Maya said. Her voice was so full of conviction that it was impossible to ignore. She saw the other officers look at each other in disbelief. They looked from her to the man on the ground, and it was clear they didn't believe her. She silenced their unspoken questions with a single hard look. She owed this man more than they could ever understand. Before he could disappear back into the shadows, she knelt beside him, not caring that her trousers were getting wet and dirty. "Wait," she said softly. "What's your name?" He looked at her and then at the circle of police officers, his eyes full of caution. He seemed to get smaller under their stares. "Leo," he whispered. The name sounded fragile, as if he hadn't said it in years. "Leo," she repeated, memorizing it. She got him a blanket and some protein bars from her emergency kit. He took them without a word and wrapped the wool blanket around his wet shoulders. He said no to a ride and to medical help. He just wanted to leave. Maya understood. Sometimes getting official help could feel like being trapped. As Leo and his dog Buddy started to walk back into the shadows, Maya felt a strange ache in her chest. Driving away from the scene with the attacker's sneering face in her rearview mirror, she couldn't stop thinking about Leo. His urgent voice, his amazing bravery, and his selfless sacrifice. Most people saw him as invisible, but he had seen the danger that she, the trained officer, had missed. Tonight, she realized that her job wasn't just about enforcing the law. It was also about seeing the humanity in people that everyone else ignored. Tonight, that lesson had been made clear through rain and courage. At the station, the interrogation room felt colder than usual. The attacker's name was Jimmy Weasel Rizzo, a criminal with a long record. His motive was simple and brutal: revenge. 6 months ago, Maya had arrested his older brother, Marcus Rizzo, who was a dangerous gang leader. Marcus ran the most violent crew in the area and was known for holding grudges. Jimmy had been waiting for a chance to get back at her. Maya wrote her report, but the official words felt like a lie. Attacker arrested with help from a civilian. The words were empty and didn't capture the truth of the man who had protected her from a knife. When Dave Miller read the report, he snorted. Help from a civilian? You mean the homeless man? Come on, Maya. You got lucky. He probably thought Rizzo was after his sleeping spot. His name is Leo, Dave, and he saved my life, she shot back, her voice cold. The conversation ended there, but she noticed her colleagues giving her condescending smirks all morning. They didn't believe her. Maybe they couldn't. It didn't fit with their view of the world. The next day, Maya couldn't stop thinking about it. She felt like she owed him something, but it was more than that. She was very curious. How does a man with such intelligent eyes end up on the street? More importantly, she realized with a sudden fear, if the Rizzos were after her, then anyone who had helped her was also a target. Leo wasn't safe. Finding him again was extremely difficult. The city made it easy for men like Leo to go unnoticed. They were just part of the background. She started her search on foot, not in her patrol car, going back to the same area and checking alleys and underpasses. She asked people at shelters and soup kitchens, describing a quiet man with intelligent eyes and a loyal dog. Many people knew of him. "Oh, Leo," a tired-looking social worker said with a nod. "And Buddy. They keep to themselves. He's a smart one. He reads any books that people leave in the free box. He never causes trouble." But no one knew where he slept. He was always around, but hard to find. Days turned into a week, then two. The search became an obsession for her, a personal mission that she kept secret from her colleagues. She started keeping extra food, water, and a new, thick blanket in her car, just in case. She felt like she was looking for a ghost, but she didn't give up. One evening, while on patrol in a quiet neighborhood far from the industrial area, she saw him. It was a familiar shape leaning against a wall covered in graffiti, with Buddy curled up at his feet. She felt a surge of excitement. She pulled the car over and the sound of the engine was loud in the quiet street. Buddy's ears perked up and he let out a soft woof before Leo even looked up. He didn't seem surprised to see her, just tired. "Thought you'd forgotten," he said, his voice still the same rough rasp. "Not a chance," Maya replied, a real smile spreading across her face for the first time in weeks. She offered him the sandwich and water she had been carrying. He took them with a quiet nod of thanks, and their eyes met. A silent understanding passed between them, a bond that had been formed in violence and rain. She sat on the curb a few feet away, ignoring the usual professional distance she kept. "I needed to thank you properly," she began, "and to warn you. The man who attacked me, his people are dangerous. They might have seen you help me." Leo chewed his sandwich slowly, looking into the distance. "People like me are good at not being seen when we don't want to be," he said. "They're not a problem." "Why did you do it, Leo?" she asked, the question that had been bothering her. "Why did you risk it?" He didn't answer right away. He scratched Buddy behind the ears and the dog leaned into his touch with a happy sigh. Finally, he looked at her, his gaze direct and very perceptive. "Because when your headlights hit me, you didn't look away. You didn't sneer. You just looked, like you were seeing a person." He shrugged, a gesture that showed a lot of pain and sadness. "It's been a while." His words hit her hard. She realized with a sense of shame how many times she had looked away from people like him. For Leo, that simple, brief moment of being seen had been enough for him to risk everything. Over the next few weeks, their meetings became a strange, unspoken routine. She would find him on her patrols, and they would talk. She learned that Buddy was his constant companion, the only living creature that had stayed with him through everything. He, in turn, learned that she was driven by a strong sense of justice that was slowly being worn down by the system she worked for. During one conversation while they were sitting near the old public library, he pointed to the building. "Corinthian columns," he said matter-of-factly. "A bit fancy for a public building, don't you think? It shows a certain insecurity from the time it was built." He then gave a short, interesting history of the building's construction. Maya stared at him. "How do you know that?" A sad look crossed his face. "I used to be a history professor," he said quietly. Then he fell silent, and the admission hung in the air. He didn't say any more, but Maya started to piece together a story of a life that had been ruined by some unknown tragedy. She started to see his intelligence as a wasted resource, not just a curiosity. "You're wasting your potential out here, Leo," she told him one day, her voice full of more frustration than she had intended. He gave her a bitter smile. "The world decided it was done with me a long time ago, officer." "My name is Maya," she corrected him gently. He just nodded, but the next time she saw him, he greeted her with a quiet, "Evening, Maya." It felt like a victory. The turning point came on a very cold and windy night. A frantic call came over the radio. A 6-year-old boy with autism, Lucas, had disappeared from a city park during a family picnic. He couldn't speak and was terrified of loud noises. The entire police force went to the park, a large group of uniforms and flashing lights. Hours passed. The temperature dropped. The parents were becoming hysterical and hope was starting to fade. They thought they had searched every inch of the park. The search was about to be called off for the night when Maya saw a figure at the edge of the police line. Leo, with Buddy pulling eagerly on a rope leash. He looked out of place. Dave Miller saw him and immediately walked over. "Hey, get out of here. This is a police investigation." "Dave, stand down," Maya snapped, walking quickly to Leo's side. "What is it, Leo?" Leo ignored the hostile stares. He pointed with his chin towards a thick patch of overgrown bushes at the far end of the park, near an old, padlocked maintenance shed that everyone had missed. "He's in there," Leo said, his voice low but certain. "The dog?" Buddy was whining, his body tense, his nose twitching as he pulled towards the shed. "We already cleared that area," Dave scoffed. "No, we didn't. We only checked the path near it," Maya argued, her instincts telling her to trust him. "The shed's been locked for years." She looked at Leo, then at the desperate faces of the boy's parents. "Get me bolt cutters." The captain hesitated, but Maya's strong conviction convinced him. 2 minutes later, the rusty lock was cut. Maya pushed the creaking door open and shone her light inside. There, huddled in the far corner behind a stack of old lawnmowers, was the little boy, shivering and crying silently. As the paramedics rushed in and the parents' cries of sadness turned to relief, the other officers stared at Leo in stunned disbelief. He had done what 24 trained police officers with thermal cameras and search plans couldn't do. He didn't wait for thanks. As soon as the boy was safe, he turned to leave, feeling uncomfortable in the spotlight. Maya caught up with him at the park entrance. "Leo, wait. How did you know?" He pointed down at Buddy, who was now happily eating a piece of jerky from her hand. The wind changed. He smelled the boy's fear. Or maybe his laundry detergent, who knows? Animals notice things that we have forgotten how to listen for. He paused, looking back at the chaotic, joyful scene. "People need you, Leo," Maya said, her voice full of emotion. "Not just me, everyone. You see things that other people miss." For the first time since she'd met him, a flicker of something other than pain appeared in Leo's eyes. It wasn't quite hope, but it was close. The next day, Maya walked into her captain's office and closed the door. She told him everything: the attack by Rizzo, Leo's past as a professor, and the missing child in the shed. Captain Evans, a man who believed in rules and paperwork, listened with a skeptical frown. "Singh, he's a homeless man. And he's smarter and more observant than half the detectives in this building," Maya retorted. "He saved my life. He found that kid, and he's out there wasting away. There has to be something we can do." She proposed an idea she had been thinking about all night. The station needed help with outreach and translation for the growing immigrant and refugee communities in the poorer areas. People who were scared of the police. She had recently learned that Leo spoke fluent Spanish and some Russian. Evans rubbed his temples, but he saw the determination in her eyes. He also knew a good story for the press when he saw one. The story of the homeless hero who found the missing boy was already getting out. "Fine," he sighed. "Bring him in. We'll offer him a part-time job as a civilian consultant. It will be a trial, but if he messes up once, he's out." Convincing Leo was harder. "I don't belong in your world, Maya," he argued, terrified of the attention and judgment. "It's not charity, Leo," she insisted, standing with him under a bridge as rain drummed on the concrete above. "It's a purpose. You've earned this." He reluctantly agreed. His first day was difficult, with people whispering and giving him suspicious stares. He was given a small desk in a noisy corner where he sat stiffly with Buddy curled up under his feet. But then a scared Ukrainian family came in to report a bad landlord and couldn't communicate with the desk sergeant. Leo stepped forward and, in quiet, gentle Russian, translated their story. He calmed the crying children and explained their rights. He helped the two groups understand each other. People stopped whispering. They started watching. For the first time in years, Leo wasn't just surviving. He was contributing. He was being seen. And Maya watched from a distance, feeling very proud. Weeks turned into months. Leo became a familiar face at the police station with the official title of Community Liaison. His desk was no longer in the corner, but in the main office. Buddy, the station's unofficial mascot, had his own water bowl and was spoiled with treats. Leo's insights into the daily life of the city were very valuable. He could predict where a conflict might happen, or help solve a dispute before it got serious. He was a link between two different worlds. But his new life didn't erase his old one. There were nights when he still felt the pull of the streets, where he could be anonymous. Sometimes, after a particularly hard day, Maya would find him outside, just staring into the distance with a haunted look in his eyes. On those nights, she wouldn't push him. She would just stand with him silently until he was ready to come back inside. Their friendship grew into something more complex and hard to define. One evening, she invited him to her apartment for dinner. He showed up nervously with a single perfect rose that he had bought with his first full paycheck. They ate pasta and talked for hours, not as a police officer and a consultant, but as two lonely people who had found an unlikely friend in each other. However, the danger from the Rizzos hadn't gone away. It had been growing. Marcus Rizzo, with the help of a corrupt lawyer and a legal loophole, was suddenly out of prison on appeal. The first thing he did was not to run away, but to put the word out on the street. He wanted the police officer who had arrested him, and he wanted the homeless man who had helped her. It happened on a Thursday. Leo was walking Buddy near the river when a black car screeched to a halt beside him. Two of Rizzo's thugs jumped out. Leo was tough, but he was no match for them. They beat him, threw him into the boot of the car, and left Buddy barking frantically on the pavement. A witness called the police. When Maya heard the call, male abduction, victim matches description of station liaison Leo, she felt a cold fear. She knew instantly who was behind it. She arrived at the scene to find Buddy frantic and whining, refusing to leave the spot where Leo had been taken. A text message appeared on her phone from an unknown number. It was a picture of Leo bruised and bloody, tied to a chair in a dark but recognizable place, the abandoned canning factory by the docks. The message was simple: come alone, or he dies. Police rules demanded that she call for backup, set up a perimeter, and wait for the SWAT team. But she knew Rizzo. He was vengeful and unstable. If he saw a single police car, Leo would be dead. She looked at Buddy, who was looking back at her, his eyes full of a desperate, intelligent plea. She made a decision that could end her career or her life. She put her phone on the dashboard of her car so it could be tracked by GPS. She took off her radio and body armor and left them on the passenger seat. Then she knelt down in front of the dog. "Okay, Buddy," she whispered, her voice tight. "Find him. Show me the way." She started running, her gun a heavy weight at her side. The dog seemed to understand and took off, leading her through a maze of back alleys and shortcuts, Leo's world. It was a route that no car could follow, a map of the city's hidden paths. She arrived at the factory out of breath, her heart pounding. The place was a ruin of rust and broken glass. She slipped through a gap in the fence, with Buddy moving silently beside her. Inside, the main factory floor was huge and full of shadows. In the center, lit by a single bare light bulb, Leo was tied to a chair. Marcus Rizzo stood beside him, a cruel smile on his face and a gun in his hand. Jimmy and one other thug stood guard. "Right on time, Officer Singh," Marcus sneered. "I knew you couldn't resist helping someone in trouble. Even if he's a filthy homeless man." "Let him go, Marcus," Maya said, her voice steady, her hands held out where he could see them. "This is between you and me." "Oh, it's about all of us now," Rizzo chuckled. "He got involved in family business, so he gets to watch while I finish what my idiot brother started." He pressed the gun to Leo's temple. Leo's eyes, though swollen, met hers. He gave a tiny, almost unnoticeable shake of his head. "Don't do it." In that moment, Buddy, who had been hiding in the shadows at Maya's command, shot out from behind a pillar of rusty machinery. He didn't go for Marcus. He went for the other goon, jumping and latching onto his arm with the ferocity of a wolf. The man screamed and his gun fired wildly into the ceiling. It was the distraction Maya needed. She dived behind a stack of rotting pallets as Jimmy opened fire. Wood splinters exploded around her. She fired back 2 controlled shots. Jimmy grunted and fell. Marcus, enraged, turned his attention from Leo and fired at her. The bullet sparked off the metal pillar inches from her head. Leo, seeing his chance, threw his entire body weight sideways, tipping the chair over with a heavy crash. He was a target, but a moving one. The factory floor turned into a chaos of shouts, gunfire, and barking. Maya was trapped. Rizzo was moving towards her. It was over. Then, from his position on the floor, Leo yelled, "The crane! Maya, the hoist chain!" Her eyes darted up. Above Rizzo, a massive industrial crane with a heavy iron hook hung on a rusty chain. It was controlled by a lever box on the pillar she was hiding behind. It was a crazy one-in-a-million chance. She didn't hesitate. While Rizzo was focused on her, she reached around the pillar, her hand slapping against the control box until she found the big, greasy lever marked "Release." She pulled it down with all her strength. With a deafening screech of protesting metal, the chain brake released. The massive hook and chain fell downwards, landing directly on the unsuspecting Marcus Rizzo. He looked up a second too late, his eyes wide with shock before the heavy iron assembly crashed down on him, pinning him to the concrete floor with a sickening crunch. Silence. It was broken only by Buddy's low growl and Leo's ragged breathing. Slowly, Maya came out from behind the pallets, her gun aimed at the motionless body of Rizzo. She walked over and cut Leo free with a knife from her boot. He stumbled to his feet, rubbing his raw wrists. He was bruised, but his spirit was unbroken. They stood there for a moment in the middle of the mess, the dust settling around them. Then, without a word, he pulled her into a fierce hug. She buried her face in his shoulders, smelling the dust, sweat, and blood. They had survived. Together. Months later, on a quiet evening, Leo stood on the small balcony of his own apartment. It was a modest place, but the view of the city lights was his. The walls were no longer bare, they were lined with bookshelves. Buddy slept peacefully on a rug at his feet. The door opened and Maya stepped out, handing him a cup of tea. She was wearing casual clothes, her off-duty uniform. She leaned against the railing beside him, their shoulders touching. After the incident at the factory, everything had changed. She had been reprimanded for not following orders, but she had also been given an award for bravery. Leo was no longer just a consultant, he was a city-wide hero, and his story was a symbol of redemption. "What are you thinking about?" she asked softly. Leo looked out at the sprawling, glittering city. It was still a place of secrets, but it no longer felt like a threatening place. It felt like home. "I was a history professor," he said, his voice quiet but steady. "I used to teach my students that history is a story told by the survivors. I think, I think I'm finally ready to start telling my own." He looked at her, his eyes clear and full of a light she had never seen before. "And it's not just about the past anymore. It's about the future." Maya smiled, her eyes glistening. "Then let's build it together," she whispered. It was a promise, spoken not in a dark alley with the threat of rain and violence, but under the hopeful glow of 1,000 city lights. A police officer and a man who had been forgotten had found their way out of their difficult past, not by erasing their history but by building a future on the strong foundation of their shared survival.